If the questions are for us or comments, you can email to us, call, or whatever you want to do, and we'll take them just as if you were here. And after we get done tonight, we will have to have a meeting where all this stuff is discussed, and we'll decide of the issues that were presented to us, which ones we're going to deal with. That's how that part will work. So, that said, I just want to show of hands, just for the heck of it. How many people are here from East Goshen? Oh! Wow. That's amazing. Whoa. How many few people are here from the outside world? Oh, that's a shame. Armin did say he made 2 pots of coffee. They're right like behind that sign on the hallway over there. You're free to go up and get coffee. If we run out, he'll make some more for you. He is a very talented guy. He does 2 things well. He's a beekeeper and he makes coffee. That said, I know Eric's back there. Eric, are you the only one that's going to stream the meeting or record the meeting?
I can't speak for anybody else, Marty, but I'm recording and also live streaming to my Facebook page.
Okay. I would normally have you come up, but since you're one of the panelists, I think we already know who you are, so we'll put that in the minutes. The reason I asked the question is we have to put it into the minutes. That said, I would like to go around the room, and we're going to start over with Bill Wagaman, since it's easy to go that way, and have everybody introduce themselves. The ones that are our guests, where they're from, what group they represent, and then we'll come by the supervisors and end up over there. Where's Carolyn? Is she on here? Okay, very good. Go ahead, Bill.
Bill Wagaman, I'm an 18-year resident, East Goshen of Beautree Development.
Lex Pavlo, I've been a resident of Beautree for 28 years.
And?
Linda Farrell, Pipeline Safety Coalition. I live in East Goshen Township.
I'm Mark Freed, an attorney with Kirk and Kiefner. I live in Tredyffrin. I'm a former supervisor there and former Cato member over there with Marty, who used to get me in a lot of trouble.
Janet Emanuel, I'm a supervisor, and I've been in the township since 1974.
I'm the honey guy, Carmen Batavio, supervisor, fire marshal. I've been in East Goshen 40 years, I guess.
I just want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding about the honey part. That's the stuff that comes in a bottle that you buy. It's not his personality. I want you to know that. I'm Marty Shea, the chairman. I'd appreciate if everybody would come in, find seats, because if everybody's seated, when we get 21 people around the side standing, we have to shut the door because no more people are allowed in here because of fire regulations. But right now we don't have that problem, but I appreciate if everybody stays seated.
Mike Lynch, East Goshen Township Supervisors, here East Goshen since 1983.
David Shuey, East Goshen Township Supervisor, 25-year resident.
Bernie Greenberg, East Goshen resident for 18 years, Chairman of the Sierra Club's Pipeline Committee.
There you go.
Eve Miari. I live in Delaware County in media, and I work at Clean Air Council.
Eric Friedman from Thornbury Township, Delaware County, where I'm the president of the Andover Homeowners Association. I'd like to say thanks to East Goshen for having this meeting today.
Are you going to represent Carolyn and tell her what she gets here? You might as well do it. Well, Carolyn Hughes lives in East Goshen. She's part of the group also. I assume she's going to be here in a few minutes and make a grand entrance, so everybody knows that she's here.
We'll do work till 7 o'clock, so she'll be here.
Well, say for 7 o'clock maybe. What we're going to do, I've handled the official part of the meeting. This is a simple. By the way, I've been out there and it's very difficult to hear in this room, so if somebody forgets to turn their microphone on, please wave your hand or something, because I'll tell you, it is extraordinarily difficult to hear, and it's particularly difficult. We're all at the same level that you folks are, and you're just going to have to hear our voices and the heck with the beautiful faces that we have up here. So with that, the way we're going to run the meeting tonight, I've asked, well, not me personally, the board asked Dave Shuey if he would moderate or facilitate the meeting tonight, and I would like to turn the meeting at this stage over to David, and I want to thank him for the work he put into this to get ready for this meeting.
The first thing I want to do is make sure everyone knows that this meeting was suggested by the gentleman to my right, Mike Lynch. So I'll tell you that in advance, so if it goes bad, you know.
I need to sit on the end.
That's right. I'd like to just go over the objectives of the meeting tonight so everyone knows. The first thing that I want to do on the record is to let you know, and we can verbally affirm this or whatever, that all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors in East Goshen Township agree that it's ill-conceived to have an NGL pipeline or pipelines running through East Goshen Township. All 5 members of the board believe that. We should not have NGL pipelines running through densely populated areas. The second part of the meeting is that the Board of Supervisors and the staff, despite state and federal restrictions and limitations, are currently involved in several initiatives aimed at holding Sunoco accountable for their actions in our township. And we want to tell you about what we're doing now, and that's going to be 5 minutes. We don't want to dwell on it. The third thing we're going to do is listen. This is a public comment meeting. Marty alluded to the fact that we're not going to debate, we're not going to discuss, we're not going to engage other than to listen and ask questions. And we're going to take copious notes. And then we're going to take all the input that comes in here tonight, and we're going to digest that, prioritize it, and move forward with initiatives that make sense for the township. So this is a listening meeting. So the public comment part of this meeting is for us to hear you. So if we say at the end of your comment, thank you very much for your comment, we're not ignoring you. We're listening to your comments. There's a difference between just hearing you and sincerely and truly listening to you, and that's what we're going to try to do tonight. All right? The assembled panel, we've introduced ourselves and people know a little bit about it. We have advocacy groups here tonight, including AGSI, the Sierra Club, Middletown Pipeline Coalition, Clean Air Council, Pipeline Safety Coalition, and the Del Chesco Public Pipeline Safety Group. I don't know if I missed anybody. We have residents, and we have non-residents. And we have lawyers, we have healthcare professionals, we have business executives. And finally, all 8 are recognized leaders regarding pipeline advocacy issues in our township and beyond. Some are new to the game, and others have been at this for years. And so what we tried to do with this panel is get that cross-section so that we have all of those in the room at the same time. So there are other people that could have been on this panel, but we just had to make some choices to get the right cross-section here. The only ground rules that I'll mention other than what Marty said is this is a listening session. So, you know, please don't think that we're not listening to you if we just say thank you for your comment. We're going to ask questions. The final thing I'll just say is we're not here to discuss the past unless it's context for a future initiative. We're here to move forward. So if you want to talk about things that happened in the past, have that be in the context of us understanding how we want to move forward. That's all I'm asking.
Do me a favor and introduce Carmen Kizan.
Oh, absolutely.
Somebody here from Annie Giddens.
Yeah, I'm probably going to ask.
I made a mistake.
Carolyn, would you please stand up? Carolyn Committa, our house representative. I'm very much aware of pipeline issues for her constituents. We have representatives from Adam. Where's Adam? Adam, you want to stand up and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Adam Cerrucci. I've been with Senator Gittman's office for about 12 years, and as everybody knows, he's been playing this pipeline for most of the majority of that time, going back to when East Goshen was in our district. But we're still happy to partner with you and be a part of that ongoing battle.
We have representative from Tom Killian's office. Stand up and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Sean McNichol. I've been with Senator Killian for 3 weeks. Very excited to be here and to hear the concerns of the community, and thank you for having me.
Anybody else? Anybody else here? It's great to have 3 of our state, 1 state representative and 2 representatives of our state, and notice Republican and Democrat. So nonpartisan issue of pipelines. So,
David, you can always ask if anybody out there feels that they need to be introduced.
yeah. Anybody else want to introduce themselves? I just want to briefly talk about what we're doing so far. I think that maybe people might have been surprised by my first comment that all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors feel that we should not have NGL pipelines running through East Goshen Township. It's an ill-conceived project, and we all believe that. So you might also be surprised to know kind of what we're doing now, and I don't mean this in any kind of offensive way. This is just, here's what we're doing, so let's put this into context. And if you have ideas around the things that we're doing now, that we could do them better, more effectively, we'd like to hear that. So we're trying to put that in the context of why we're saying what we're doing now. And the first thing is that we sought initial intervener status in the Sunoco ETP pipeline in June of 2014 regarding the proposed pump station in West Goshen Township. And then more recently, March of this year, we filed again regarding the emergency order to suspend Mariner 1 operations. So we're filing as interveners on the Sunoco issues. We file on interveners on other pipelines, but we're going to try to focus on Sunoco ETP tonight. The second thing is that we adopted Resolution 17317 in November before I became supervisor, advocating for bipartisan action to approve, advance, and enact legislation that assures the health, safety, and welfare of Pennsylvania residents. That resolution is being used as a model resolution by other townships. We had 2 resolutions. The first one wasn't as strong, and the board came back with a second resolution, which was much more forceful and effective and clear about what we wanted. Third thing is that we cited Sunoco for 9 noise violations in East Goshen Township. We went to our district court. We won 7 of the 9 counts. Sunoco has appealed those 7 citations for noise violations. We have a court date in June 15th in Doug Schenken's court in 13th in Chester County, and we intend to pursue. We think those noise ordinances are enforceable. We're going to pursue those. The fourth thing is that we've repeatedly corresponded with our local, state, and federal representatives to let them know that we need them to advocate on behalf of our citizens. There are areas that are just frustrating for us that we can't affect in a local municipal way, and we need our state and federal representatives to work with us. The next thing is that we recently authorized John Snyder, who's here with us tonight, to pursue legal action. John also chairs our zoning hearing board, to pursue legal action against Sunoco ETP for potentially violating the federal statutes, Title 49, that requires Sunoco's public awareness program to be properly communicated to warn and protect the public from danger. So John is working kind of in a process that will take that forward. We think Title 49 trumps the Act 13 for public awareness. And we're pursuing that in court if we have to. We are considering a Chapter 5 filing. I don't know how many people might be familiar with Chapter 5, but the PUC allows, and we're almost invited to do this, I might say, by Bob Young, who's an attorney for the PUC, who basically said, hey, you know, in a meeting, there's this little-known thing called Chapter 5 in the PUC regulations that allows organizations and groups to bring, members of the public, to bring ideas around regulation into the PUC. And we think that we probably can't get land use regulations through Chapter 5. We've kind of told that. But we think that noise, vibration, hours of operation, and emergency warning systems, which are non-land use issues, could be promulgated by the PUC, and we're considering drafting a Chapter 5 submission to the PUC. And finally, we use various methods of communication to keep residents informed about Sunoco ETP, and I'm open to hear some ideas about how we can better do that. We use a lot of different channels. We have a dedicated tab now on our website for pipelines. We use our quarterly newsletter. post constant contact, letters to the editor of local news outlets, sponsored public meetings like this one, and individual letters to affected property owners. So we've used a lot of different communications, but when it comes to pipelines, we're kind of thinking it's better to over-communicate than just communicate or under-communicate. So we might hear some ideas tonight. So that's what we're doing now. And so the rest of this meeting is for us to sit back, take notes, and listen to the ideas from our panel first, and then folks who are here visiting us in the audience. So what I'd like to do, I think, is I'd like to start with Eric. And I'm going to kind of moderate, and we think we have 2 hours, we've got 8 people. I don't want to hold people to 15 minutes because I really want this to be a dialogue around the table. So I'm not going to say, Eric, you got 15 minutes and you're done, and then move to Eve. But let's just, hopefully everyone who's sitting up here has had a chance to kind of think a little bit about the objectives of the meeting, and we can move forward that way. So let's have it be a discussion.
And I would say a free exchange amongst the panelists, and then we all will listen during this 2-hour period.
Thank you, David. Thank you again to the supervisors of East Goshen for having this meeting. I suppose we have somebody from Sunoco here monitoring as well. I wouldn't be surprised. They didn't introduce themselves, but should I start with some ideas about things that East Goshen or other townships could potentially consider doing?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll start with this. In terms of a hazardous, highly volatile liquids pipeline like this, it's not FERC regulated. It turns out, as you know, in Pennsylvania, there is no agency or no governmental authority that has the ability to approve or disapprove the route. So the route was selected by Sunoco, presumably for its own maximum convenience. But there was just one kind of permit that was required from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, or 2 kinds of permits. They were environmental permits under Title 25, Chapters 102 and 105. And so my homeowners association and a number of other organizations leaned into this environmental permitting process. It didn't address the root of what we were interested in, which was the unsafe route selection, but we leaned into it because it was the only avenue that was available to us. And so we leaned into the process, and we found some issues there which I think could have been used by East Goshen. I'll address the past as prologue for what happens in the future. Maybe it could be used in the future for other similar projects. But a couple of examples. In 25 PA Code Section 105, it's tied back to a municipal requirement. There's stormwater management requirements and floodplain requirements that are developed by East Goshen and other townships under Act 167. And the state statute requires each municipality along the route to evaluate the plan for compliance, the operator's plan for compliance with its local stormwater management and floodplain management plans. It's Act 167 plan. And the submission of a letter from each township evaluating the route is a requirement of the state law. And in fact, what happened was DEP declared the applications administratively complete, even though the vast majority of these Act 167 letters from municipalities were missing. They weren't there. And yet the DEP declared the applications complete and began the processing of them. So I think in the future, should the DEP do something like that, that there is an opportunity for the municipalities to insist on their right to be a part of this process. In other words, it's a state law that incorporates a municipal process. Now, I will say that East Goshen, in fact, did lean into this. In December 2015, East Goshen wrote a letter to its great credit saying that it was impossible for the township to determine compliance with its local stormwater management ordinance based on the materials that it had received from Sunoco. And again, in 2017, East Goshen wrote, actually East Goshen's engineer evaluated the stormwater management and floodplain management plan submitted by Sunoco and responded with a 21-point deficiency letter. And I think that I would offer this as an idea for something that can be done going forward. Townships have, I know that your Act 167 plan was developed at considerable cost and considerable effort by East Goshen Township. I don't know that, I'm sure that it was. I would bet that it was. And yet, DEP didn't take these deficiencies, which East Goshen articulated in advance, didn't take these into account, even though the DEP was required to do so by state law. And so I offer that as an idea. Again, it's an environmental issue. It's not the key. It doesn't get at the key safety issue, but it's something that's clearly available under the framework that exists.
That's great, thank you. It leads me to a question. I read today that the pipeline in Virginia permits were suspended because of the nebulous language in their limited taking statement. And for those in the audience, the limited taking statement, pipelines are required to write a statement about the species of animals that they will kill while they're cutting down trees and going through aquifers and streams and rivers and so on. And in Virginia, the law, just the federal courts, said that their limited taking statement was inadequate and suspended their permits. I was wondering, in our state, does the DEP or the PUC, and I'll throw this out to anybody on the panel, do they have to file a limited taking statement? Isn't that a nice term, limited taking statement? I mean, species of animals we're going to destroy. Do we have to do that in Pennsylvania? And did Sunoco? Is it adequate? Would that be an area?
David, I want to let somebody else answer that because that's not my area of expertise, but I would offer this that your comment made me think of. Is that so in Thornbury Township, Delaware County, they issued some municipal permits to Sunoco and then rescinded them based on Sunoco's noncompliance with the permit conditions. Not just once, but repeated noncompliance. They withdrew the permit. So I think even to the extent these Act 167 letters were issued by East Goshen, I think there still may be an opportunity for review if Sunoco's not in compliance. I mean, I would offer this to any municipality to the extent that permits were issued and the operator is in non-compliance, that there's an opportunity to withdraw permits. At least Thornbury Township's demonstrated that.
I might be able to answer, and actually, and I just heard about the news out of Virginia when I was driving over here, actually. So, is that a FERC regulated? Do you know? Or is that? So, it might be helpful just to take 1 minute and sort of give the big overview of how the Sunoco pipeline is different than a lot of the other pipelines we hear about. And basically, as Eric was mentioning, Sunoco is PUC regulated, it's state regulated, it's hazardous liquids. FERC, which is the federal agency that looks at siting and gives us, it's essentially a federal PUC, doesn't do hazardous liquids. And why that's important is if it's FERC regulated, they not only do siting, but they require that you go through the NEPA process, the National the Environmental Policy Act. And as part of that, you're going to do a lot of these issues related to wildlife and endangered species. Because Sunoco is not federally regulated, it's state regulated, PUC regulated, the avenue, I believe, and again, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the avenue is that you would, through your 102 and 105 permits, which are what Eric was mentioning was the permits issued by DEP, 105 being for water resources, wetlands, and 102 being for earth disturbance. You would, as part of that, you have to look at endangered species, do what they call a PIND analysis and look for things like bog turtles and other things, bog turtle habitat and other things like that. And I think that's where you would have your opportunity to look at your endangered species.
Mark, I'd add that, pardon me, with a non-FERC project like Sunoco, ETP, the type of review that Virginia was just denied on goes through the Army Corps of Engineers. They're more specifically relegated to looking at species.
That's one other, and again, I know we don't want to get too deep. I'm a part of the problem is I'm a former DEP lawyer too. So in our permits, the permits that the Corps of Engineers would look at in Virginia, Pennsylvania is a little bit unique also in that respect, in that when it's a federal permit, that's something that the Corps would look at. There's actually, they call it a joint application. There's essentially two permits. The state and the feds are looking at it together. It's something that there are certain things that in other states, the states would have full primacy over the federal law. When it comes to certain things in Pennsylvania, the feds, the Corps of Engineers actually still handles things, and DEP handles other things.
And I would add that Eric, wherever he went, Eric's point about the 105, 102 and 105 permits and municipal participation transfers as well to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer 404 permits and Clean Air Council, Pipeline Safety Coalition, Mountain. I could list many organizations, NGOs, who worked with municipalities, but also with the community members to submit comments to these agencies to highlight the deficiencies, and that community participation can make a difference. We've seen that in Virginia. And also would note that, as Mark said, that there's a difference in how pipelines are regulated based on whether or not they're NGLs or natural gas pipelines, whether they're interstate or intrastate. It's a very, very complicated roadmap to try to follow.
Linda, can you turn that into what could we do in the township?
Do you want me to do my presentation now?
Well, it is. We're not supposed to do presentations.
I don't mind.
But you know, let's.
Yeah.
Let's. How would that work? What could we do to foster what you just talked about?
So actually, that is a segue into what I wanted to discuss tonight. And I was asked to bring handouts for folks, which I did not hand out because I didn't think I was next in line here. But one of the things that we would like to see is the creation of community advocacy networks. Pipeline Safety Coalition, as background for people who don't know us, is an educational resource. We work nationally, but we also very much focus on Chester County. We've helped create the Pipeline Information Center that the county has with that fabulous mapping. And we've worked with folks such as the folks next to me here, and Bernie over here, some folks in the crowd, on a concept of community advocacy networks that are based on a grassroots creation of entities such as EGSI, who work with municipalities such as yourself in a very proactive, respectful, and a manner in which we're discussing not pro or con, but what the facts are about a pipeline coming into your community. Now, Pipeline Safety Coalition we've been around since I moved to East Goshen, East Goshen Township back in 1992. I didn't know there was a pipeline on our property. I found out at the settlement table, and literally found out at the settlement table that the farmland I was about to use had 3 natural gas pipelines laid. So since that was my first experience with pipelines. Clearly, I'm not farming. right, well, maybe not clearly. But I'm not farming right now. I've become a safety advocate, but we don't tell people what we do. We try to be a library and provide information to communities and municipalities and legislators that help to make informed decisions. Again, we don't tell people what to do. We say, here's the information. If we don't have an answer to your question, we'll find it for you. It streamlines the process of municipalities trying to get ahead of the abundant numbers of pipeline projects that are bound to be coming through this county. We are a prime location for export. Pipeline companies have told me personally that Chester County is catnip for them. So how do you get ahead of that? We think forming networks like EGSI. EGSI is kind of they're really a perfect example of what we think East Goshen Township could do and perhaps be a model for other municipalities, where community members educate their grassroots, they're autonomous, they do not work with or for a municipality, but they work with their community. They bring education to the community, they help to streamline your process of information gathering. We have toolkits, we have checklists. What should you do when you hear about a pipeline project coming into your community? We have the ability to provide, and these community advocacy networks have the ability to provide a monthly newsletter. Here's what's happening, here's a new pipeline that's proposed to come into your community. Municipalities have, as so many entities, have more work and not enough time to really address all of the issues that you're faced with. This is an opportunity for a community group to come to you and say, hey, here's some information that might help you. Here's some information you can add to your website. Here's what's happening on the 102, 105 permits for XYZ pipeline. Here are the entities that are working together. You might want to work with us as well. And then expanding that to the community advocacy networks, reaching out. It's a real pay it forward concept. You know, it's not rocket science. So the communities outreach to each other. You know, I wish I knew then what I know now, and form community advocacy networks in each municipality who work with their municipalities, and then the municipalities work with each other. Your resolutions are a perfect example that you folks are already headed in this path, helping other municipalities so that there are ordinances, resolutions and ordinances that have consistent language and therefore have more weight when municipalities individually are trying to work their way through the process of pipelines. That's kind of our approach that we think you could utilize. We'd love to see East Goshen Township carry the torch to. Maybe that's not a good. Use of words. Don't bring the torch in. To other municipalities, because we really believe, and we've talked with legislators, we've talked with DEP, FERC, PHMSA. Everyone is at a point where they believe that a grassroots educational-based alliance, a parallel to all the other organizations, because no one organization can do it all. No one municipality can do it all. But if we each focus on what we're best at and work together, we might have a better shot at this thing.
So if I boil that down, would I be saying that we could be better at utilizing outside resources for information for our activities and to communicate with our residents?
You could have saved these guys a whole lot of time listening to me. Yes, yes, absolutely. And pardon me, you know, Clean Air Council and Pipeline Safety Coalition and Sierra Club have been working this way for years, so that so that when we know an Act 167 issue has come up, we can reach out to communities and municipalities, but it has never really been a grassroots effort. It's always been the NGOs working down. And we think that it might be more effective for it to come from the NGOs, from the community, because the community then is absolutely educated and aware of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and they participate. I mean, that's what a community is supposed to be.
I'm going to move over to this side of the table and have Barney, who represents the Sierra Club. He's been at this a real long time.
I've been out it a long time. First, I want to congratulate the board on what David just only announced, that everybody on the board agrees that an NGL pipeline should not go through East Goshen Township. I think you've come a long way. You've come a long way. And I don't blame you, and don't take that. In the beginning, we all were innocent in this. We all wanted to trust Sunoco. I came to many of the Sunoco meetings, and they told us everything they were going to do, and it looked good. We can do this, we can do that. Don't worry. There's no problem. But only as we worked with Sunoco and saw the deeds, we realized they were not telling us the truth. And that the first mistake that Sunoco made is to choose this route for an NGL pipeline. And it was chosen because of Marine East 1, which went in 85 years ago. But that was the first mistake. And then came the deficient environmental permits, which the governor forced the DEP to hastily approve in February a year ago, which is very disappointing to all of us. And that was disappointing for me and East Goshen and the Sierra Club. And we really thought that things are looking pretty bad for us until Sunoco started to work. And then, as the expression is, they shot themselves in the foot with the construction methods, contaminating water supplies, unapproved construction methods, sinkholes, spills, etc. And we realized that this is not a good pipeline operator. But we didn't know, well, we knew some of the facts from Eric, but we didn't realize how bad they were at that time. And plus, they didn't tell us the truth. We all know that. One of the biggest concerns I have is when they decided that we didn't need a safety valve nearby. Now, there was supposed to be a safety valve west of 202 on their property. And they said, well, we didn't want it there. We want it east of 202. And they bought this property of land for a considerable amount of money. But West Goshen said, you can't put it there. And they went to the PUC, and it was supposed to be decided in April at a hearing, but Sunoco said, we don't need it. Isn't it? That's ridiculous. This is because there's going to be a hearing. Now you don't need it. You're going to skip one safety valve, so we're going to have one 6 miles upstream and 6 miles downstream, so we have 12 miles without it. So that is a big concern, and so that emphasizes my concern is safety. My concern is safety of Marine East because of the construction methods, the lack of a safety valve, etc., that I'm concerned they can't do it right. And we have to live here. We have to live here and with maybe a poorly constructed pipeline. So what do we do about that? And I can't contest that, but we can find people that can. We can see if it's appropriate to miss a safety valve. It's simple. We're supposed to have a safety valve at 202, and now we say we don't need it because there was a lot of concern about it. So I'm proposing that we get expertise to help us, to see if this pipeline is safe. I'm proposing that we hire an independent inspector to report to the Board of Supervisors, to look at the safety of Marine East. Now, several townships can join into this to see if Mariner East is safe for us. I mean, someone with expertise is what I'm asking for. I'm a resident here, and I'm demanding it. I'm demanding to know that this pipeline is safe. It's simple. That's all I have to say.
Microphone.
Caroline Hughes, who is working tonight and rushed to get here. So Caroline, we'll just turn it over to you to comment on anything you heard so far or anything new, ideas that you might have. Caroline's a resident of East Goshen.
Well, I'll just add that it sounds like what Bernie was saying complements the idea of the independent risk assessment that we've all been trying to talk to municipalities for, and I gave a presentation for last month. And so I agree completely that safety is obviously one of the number one concerns with this line. And last week when we were in Harrisburg for Senator Dinniman's hearing, Matt Gordon, who's the project manager for this project, got up there and testified under oath that this was the safest route to choose. And that really took my breath away. He maintained that he also discussed about how hard it would have been for them to find other routes, and it would have just been really difficult for them. But he kept maintaining that it was the safest route that they could have chosen, that they did it for the good of the community. And you can look at the testimony. We are on our 52nd notice of violation for unlawful behavior, for behavior that clearly exists over and over and over and over again, but this operator is not willing to follow any rules. They follow their own rules. So I think that this community has demonstrated a need to become concerned, to elevate their own voices. I think the community engagement is essential. I think things like the DEP public comment periods have made a difference. I've watched them evolve. I've watched the DEP's response evolve as the public has engaged more and more and more. I haven't had a chance to read it today, but I don't know if anyone has discussed yet the DEP's response that Mike was talking about earlier.
The one from a week and a half ago?
That addresses Bow Tree, and it was just released today, and I apologize, I'm coming from work, so I haven't had a chance to read it. And it is it's quite lengthy. So it used to be a one-page letter, and now we're getting extensive response. So the response and the engagement has increased. I think we need to continue to engage our state officials, to engage the agencies, and to hold them responsible in every way that we can. But it's really helpful if we have the municipality's support to do so.
We've done a lot of, Carolyn knows because she gets the letters from us. What else can we do? Some of us have gone to Harrisburg, and some of us, the board, the bills that we just brought out from committee, we wrote thank you notes to the committee chairs, Republican and Democrat, thanking them for finally getting them out of committee and moving them forward, the legislation that we support and that our resolution supported, and encouraged them to consider. What else can we do from a state and federal advocacy extraction that would be impactful? What else can we do? That's township.
Well,
you can't talk yet, Joe. I'm sorry, the audience can't participate yet.
I was just going to ask, I mean, honestly, helping us, helping the community, and EXE has been involved in this as well. Many of the community members in this audience have helped with this as well, to help us to commission the independent risk assessment to show to Bernie's point, exactly why our fears are very founded in reality, and to show an objective, the objective data that supports that, so that people can no longer say you're afraid of nothing. They've clearly demonstrated that there's something to be fearful of, as evidenced by their own construction methods, and yet the true risk comes when they're operational.
Eva, I'm going to go to you next from Clean Air Council. What do you see other townships, other groups
Sure.
doing?
Yeah, I'm not sure I have much to add from what has already been said. I will say that before I started at the council in January, I was very involved in organizing in Delaware County through the Middletown Coalition. And as part of that organizing that we began in the summer of 2016, I attended something like 35 municipal meetings in like 13 different townships. So I've seen a lot of township boards, sat through a lot of meetings. And I think to your question of what we can do better, one of the things that would drive me nuts as I went to these various different meetings is a phrase repeated over and over, that our hands are tied. And so I think that speaks to a certain mentality that that some townships may have about their powerlessness in situations like these. So I think the most important thing to do is to acknowledge that our hands are not tied. That's really a state of mind. You know, there are so many people out in the community working tirelessly on this issue, and these mothers especially, they're like multi-armed goddesses, so their hands are not tied. You know, they're getting together every week and every month and thinking of every possible way to possibly address this issue. I think, David, you were the one that came up with the phrase, death by 1,000 cuts. So, you know, I don't agree that hands are tied. And I think that you have demonstrated that through some of the actions that you've taken, the letters that Eric identified. It does require a certain degree of creativity to understand the ways in which you can act. One thing that I really took to heart after the PUC hearings in Harrisburg this past week is that the residents are the experts on this. The residents in all of these different townships are the ones who know what is happening on their properties. They're the ones who know about the interactions that they've had with the operator. They're the first ones to see the spills. They're often the first to document and report the spills. And they have an in-depth understanding of what is happening out in the community that you can only have from being out in the community. So I think it's really important that municipal leaders and state officials and all levels really lean into the residents and hear their voices and their experience, because that is where the truth lies around all of this. I will echo Caroline's statements about the risk assessment. There is no publicly available assessment of the risk to public safety around this pipeline. That is a huge advocacy tool. So we need that. We need to be able to demonstrate to lawmakers and to agencies the extent of the risk that our residents are facing. One other way that I would encourage townships to take action in thinking about protecting residents is also to think about protecting residents' First Amendment rights. There are laws that are currently being proposed in legislature to curtail residents' First Amendment rights around protesting with regard to pipelines. Anytime